gay in this picture. I never saw him before. Like I said, I don't pay much attention to gay guys, but I think I'd remember him. I can't believe Mom dated him. Damn. Matt stepped up. It would be helpful to know where you were Monday night, November 2nd. Tilly sat up, her body tensing. I guess we'd moved into good cop, bad cop mode. Are you serious? Tilly ended the sentence by dropping her jaw and staring at Matt. We have to cross the T's and dot the I's. If you can tell us where you were and it checks out, then that's one less person we have to keep an eye on. What? Like you're watching me? Her mouth was still hanging open. We have 2 murders. We keep an eye on everyone associated with any murder until we can be sure they have no connection with them. Understand? Matt spoke fast and with an attitude. He was ramping this up way more than I thought was necessary. This is bullshit. Why would I even kill him? Do I look like someone who could shoot a man with a shotgun? I had to step in here because I'd thought about this. I know that your dad took you dove and quail hunting as soon as you were old enough to hold a shotgun. That was a long time ago. Leon had said he saw a man point the gun at Mark Kemper, but the mind can fill in details, and the brain will try to make sense of things, even if that means changing reality to make it fit. If our witness couldn't imagine a woman with a shotgun, then when he saw one in the dark and from a distance, his mind might have just changed the facts to fit what his brain told him he should be seeing. That's one of the many reasons that eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. Money is always a good motive, Matt continued. You don't work. Did your mom offer you money to kill him? I don't need money. My dad left me half of his, and you might remember I already knew that Dad probably wouldn't survive. She at least had the good grace to say it a little sadly. I was very surprised to hear that Jim had left half his estate to Tilly. I'd imagined that all, or at least most of it, would go to Tim, and I said as much. Shows what you know. Dad didn't leave a will. It was one more thing he was weird about. So half goes to me and half to Tim. Just tell us where you were on the night of November 2nd, and we can move on. Matt leaned on the table and got in her face. I don't know. Partying, I guess. On a Monday night? Maybe at home. I don't have to answer your stupid questions. That's true. You can walk out of here and we'll put you at the top of our list. Her mouth opened wide again. No way! What the hell? You can't do that! Just answer the question. I don't know. Let me think. Monday, what, a couple of weeks ago? She pulled out her phone and looked at her messages. Let me see. Matt loomed over her. I was at a bar, she said triumphantly. The Den, in Tallahassee. She showed her phone to him. I gently took it from her. There were a number of texts with selfies of her at a bar between the hours of 11 and 2 in the morning. Who are these people with you? I asked, and she rattled off the names of half a dozen people. Young, dumb, and drunk from the looks of the photos. Hold on. Write them down with phone numbers. I slid my pad over to her and gave her back her phone. She wrote down names and numbers after looking them up on her phone. I glanced over the list. Thanks. Does your mother have anyone else that she relies on? A best friend? Is she dating anyone? She broke up with some old guy a couple of months ago. If they don't have money, they don't count, is the way she dates. She told me once she didn't want arm candy. She wanted a deep wallet. Her voice trailed off. Okay, we appreciate you coming in. What a bunch of crap, she threw back at us on her way out. That was a fucking waste of time, Matt said after she left. You didn't have to pull out the thumb screws, I told him. Give me a break. If she'd been guilty, I would have gotten a confession out of her. You can get a confession out of most people if you browbeat them long enough. Look at the Norfolk Four. The Norfolk Four were 4 sailors who confessed to a 1997 rape and murder. It became clear after several years and the confession of another man who was a known rapist that the confessions were false. Through little more than sleep deprivation and constant aggressive questioning, the 4 young men had been willing to confess to a heinous crime they hadn't committed. Matt gave me a withering look and walked out. Back to square one. I considered all of the information. If we had been talking about the murder of Jim DeVries, then she'd just given me a great motive for her or Tim. Maybe I'd check with Jim's doctors and make darn sure that there wasn't any chance his death could have been anything but natural causes. A call to Jim's lawyer was in order, too. A man of his wealth not having a will seemed crazy, even knowing how much he hated contracts. Chapter 20. I followed up with 2 of Jim's doctors and left a message for his lawyer. The doctors assured me that the hemorrhagic stroke Jim had suffered was a natural event. Of course, they couldn't just tell me that. They had to explain that a hemorrhagic stroke differed from an ischemic stroke. The hemorrhagic stroke is caused when a blood vessel in the brain ruptures. The ischemic occurs when a blood clot lodges in a vessel in the brain and blocks the flow of blood. Hemorrhagic are less common and generally cause more damage. So much for making his death out to be a murder, even though I had already begun to map out the events. Jim was somehow given a stroke. Mark knew something and was killed. Same went for Dell, and then Dr. Brooke was killed because he had some knowledge of the medical condition that was exploited to cause the death. What was really upsetting was that, as crazy as that scenario sounded, it was better than anything else I'd come up with. But it was all for naught if Jim's death was natural. The doctors did give me one small opening, saying stress was possibly a contributing factor. However, there was no way that someone could have known Jim was susceptible to a stroke, and it certainly wasn't credible that you could count on him having a massive stroke just because he was put in a stressful situation. My phone rang. "What the hell are you doing accusing my sister of killing Mark Kemper?" "Tim, we had to look at all the possibilities. She's cleared now." "You demanded an alibi!" No room for doubt about how upset he was. "That's not exactly the way it was. I admit that Deputy Green might have leaned on her a little heavy, but we're fighting an uphill battle with these murders. I will say that you need to consider the fact that these deaths and arsons are very close to your family." "Do you think I need to be reminded that my aunt was murdered?" "No, I just meant that there could be some danger to your immediate family, since we don't have any idea who's committing these murders or why." "Is that some kind of threat? If we don't cooperate, we could be next." This wasn't going well. He didn't seem to want to be calmed down. Maybe this is his way of venting all of the emotions that must have been building up with the death of his father, the murder of his aunt, and the arrival of his mother. He probably needs to be careful that he doesn't have a stroke. Not a very kind thought. I decided to take another tack. "You have every right to be mad. I should have told you why we asked your sister to come in, but we thought it would be better to just do it and get the ugly job done as fast as possible. Is your sister still upset?" "What do you think?" He was finally cooling down. "I know my sister has her flaws, but killing people isn't one of them." Hearing him say it did make our suspecting her sound stupid. We had to take her off the list of suspects, and we have. Her alibi checked out. "I guess we should be grateful for that." He just sounded irritated now, not like he might go ballistic at any moment. "Am I on your list too?" "In an investigation like this, we look at everyone." I wanted to ask him where he was on that Monday night, but I didn't think now was the time. Besides, like everyone else, what motive did he have? "I guess you'll just have to keep me on your list. With Dad in the hospital, I was going back and forth between the hospital and the house the day Kemper was killed." "I understand." Best let it drop for now. We said our goodbyes and hung up. What a day. But tomorrow was my date with Kara, and this time I wasn't going to let anything stop me from going out with her. Dead bodies be damned. They could just pile up if no one else wanted to deal with them. I called dispatch and told them that if anything came up tomorrow, the word was that I was unreachable. Lunch for everyone on Monday if I wasn't disturbed. I decided to stop by Dad's on the way home. It was a preemptive measure. Just in case Tim called him, I wanted to let Dad know what had gone down. Dad's car was in the driveway, so I let myself in, shouting to the house that I was there. The expected brutal greeting from Mauser didn't happen. This was explained when I went into the living room and found him chewing contentedly on a huge frozen bone. Like any veteran law enforcement officer, when he was eating, he was off duty. He barely lifted his eyes when I came into the room and sat down on the sofa. Dad walked in, fresh from a shower and dressed casually, which meant that he was wearing old man shorts with a polo shirt, everything in hideous colors, because he always bought the ones on the clearance racks. I told him how the interview with Tilly went. He sat there frowning. I couldn't tell if he was grinding his teeth or if it was just Mauser tearing his bone apart. "I told you so." "Thanks, Dad. I appreciate you not saying I told you so." "If it's necessary in the line of duty, I expect you to do whatever you have to bring about law and order and to come home alive. But if you can avoid it, I would appreciate you not pissing off the richest and most influential people in the county less than a year out from an election." Yeah, I know. I hated the politics of the job. I knew Dad did too, but that was the reality. I'd never seen him do anything wrong in order to keep his job, but I'd seen him do things he didn't want to do. I stayed and had dinner with him, leftover spaghetti and garlic bread. Ivy was put out with me for coming home after 8, but I tried to placate her with the idea of leftover turkey for a week after Thanksgiving. Kara called to make sure that we were still on for tomorrow. I assured her that nothing was going to stop me from being with her. "Where are we going?" "On Monday, I was planning on surprising you, but now after a couple of false starts, I'm just going to tell you. I thought we'd go to Wakulla Springs." The springs were an hour away, about 20 miles south of Tallahassee. "I haven't been there in years. I loved it as a kid," I said. "I haven't ever been." I wish I'd thought of it. Picking a state park rather than a posh restaurant raised her up a dozen pegs on my scoreboard. I was beginning to worry that I might not live up to her standards. We agreed I'd pick her up at 10. I really wanted to make a great second impression. The weather was neither warm nor cold, so I didn't have to make any major clothing decisions. I checked the car and cleaned out the trash and some of the paperwork. I'd gas it up before I picked her up in the morning. I checked Google Maps to be sure I knew where I was going. Ivy followed me around the whole time. Guys worry about stuff too. We aren't all Neanderthals. Or at least we aren't all always Neanderthals, I told her. She chose that moment to sit on her back, bend forward, and start cleaning her butt. I knew this was not a coincidence. "Yeah, maybe you won't be getting quite as much turkey next week." But she knew it was an idle threat. I got a text from Eddie Saturday morning as I was making last-minute preparations to pick up Kara. It was simple enough. "Found guy who was asked by guy about arson." I just wasn't in the mood for a texting exchange with my CI, especially when it started out that vague. It could wait until the evening. Kara looked beautiful, wearing a sundress and a mix of bold colors. It was a bright day, and her red hair glowed in the sunlight. As we drove, I wished I had a convertible. Kara would have looked perfect, smiling up at the blue sky with her hair flying behind her. Wakulla Springs in the fall, even on the weekend, is off the beaten path. There were a few cars in the parking lot, but it wasn't crowded. We walked through the old lodge, admiring the curiosities of days gone by and imagining ourselves in a world where Florida was still exotic. "I sometimes feel that I was born in the wrong time," Kara said dreamily. "I guess that's pretty common." "I think it speaks to our desire for the romance of a time and place when the world still seems filled with mysteries you might reach out and touch. These days, all the things to be discovered seem to require powerful telescopes or deep-water submersibles." According to the plaque on the wall, the lodge had been built in 1937. Hard to imagine Hitler had taken control of Germany by then, and the world waited to learn what fate had in mind, I said. "Aren't you the romantic?" She put her arm through mine. "I wanted to study history. It fascinates me, reading about people in the past and imagining what it would be like to stand in their shoes and face the daunting tasks without knowing if you would be successful or not. Don't we face huge challenges which leave us unsure of the future? she asked as we walked outside and strolled through the grounds, the maze of live oak branches overhead modeling the sunlight. Somehow our times seem less dramatic. I don't know. Maybe it's that the number of people and the complexities make everything less clear. 100 years ago, if a man or woman wanted to go somewhere and reinvent themselves, they could. It was possible to leave your old reality behind and pioneer a new life. Good luck today leaving your past and starting over. I know what you mean. My parents lived a freer life in their hippie world than I think is possible today. Even they've settled down. Is there something you'd like to escape? No, I'm not exactly trapped. But not free. You told me how you became a deputy. It's not too late to do something else. Go back to school, study history, do whatever you want. I looked at her and, for a moment, she made me believe that the world did hold endless possibilities. Maybe, if you are with the right person, they can help you move toward the life you want. Or maybe, if you're with the right person, the life you have is the life you want. Or I can just keep doing what I'm doing until I'm too old to remember that I wanted to do something else, I said with a chuckle. Love the one you're with, if you can't be with the one you love, she said. I like the love the one you're with part, I said, turning to her. I leaned in, and she raised up on her toes so that our lips met. The kiss was perfect. We parted and looked into each other's eyes. Let's take the boat tour, I said quickly. I didn't want to say anything that would spoil the kiss, and if the silence hadn't been filled with some banality, I would have been telling her my feelings when it was too early to know what my feelings really were. Great, she said, giving no indication how the kiss had affected her, beyond the sparkle in her eyes. She let go of my hand and started running down the bank toward the boat docks. I didn't catch up with her until we reached the little office that sold tickets. We had to wait for a while until the next boat went out. We passed the time looking at the movie posters on the wall. Starting in the 1940s, the springs had been used by Hollywood to film underwater scenes for various movies. There were posters for Tarzan movies and Airport 77. You aren't going to believe this, but that is one of my favorite films, I said, pointing to a poster for The Creature from the Black Lagoon. It was Dad's favorite growing up. He had it on VHS when I was a kid, and a couple times a year he'd ask me if I wanted to have dinner in the Black Lagoon. He'd bring home a pizza and turn off all the lights. For dessert, we'd make wild and crazy sundaes. Those were some of the best times I had with my dad. Not long after I started working for the department, I had one of those really bad days when I saw some stuff that nobody should have to see. I asked Dad how he decompressed after one of those days. He told me he'd put The Creature on and eat pizza and ice cream with his son. Kara put her arm around me. A park ranger came in and told us the tour was ready to leave. A dozen people were on board as the boat glided over the crystal-clear waters of the springs. As we turned and headed downriver, the guide pointed out the birds and wildlife along the banks. This is amazing. I love Florida Springs, Kara said, looking at the sunbathing alligators and the anhingas drying their wings. My parents used to take me tubing down the Itchitechny River a couple times a year. Your parents sound very interesting. If you find hippies interesting, she laughed. Actually, they're more serious than that makes them sound. They do a lot of good work. I had to work hard and spend a lot of time helping others when I was growing up. They gave me a great start in life. But that's not to say we didn't have issues. Dad can be a bit autocratic. He knows what is right and has little patience for those that take a little longer to see the light. Mom, well, she has a tendency to go off on her own tangents. Sometimes at inconvenient moments. Wherever we lived, we were surrounded with her projects. She finished a lot of them, and when she did, they were amazing. But a lot more never went much beyond an initial manic phase. She stopped and looked at me. I hope I'm not making them sound too odd. No, you're making them sound unique, like the kind of people that could raise an amazing woman. I kissed her lightly on the lips. We spent another 20 minutes listening to the tour and spotting the alligators. Walking back toward the lodge, I asked Kara if she wanted to get lunch in the dining room. "I'm famished," she said, and started pulling my arm like an excited kid. I was having the best day in years. I tried to tell myself that I was just feeling the first rush of infatuation, but it felt like more than that. I wasn't someone to get lost in emotion easily, which added to the feeling that this was something very special. I was soon to be reminded that an amazing day can explode in an instant. We were finishing lunch when Kara saw a small flyer advertising wedding planning services at the lodge. "This would be a beautiful place for a wedding," she blurted. That sentence spooked me. Where is this going? My mind wondered as I signaled our waiter for the check. She went on, "I've got some friends that just got engaged. This would be perfect." "Oh, okay." "One of them works at the vet. He is really funny. Whenever I'm feeling like crap because an animal has taken a turn for the worse, or a client has been a real asshole, he knows how to cheer me up. His fiancée is quite a bit older than he is, but when he was first telling me about the guy, I wasn't too sure. But Rick is just as nice as Terry." She looked at me. "I'm prattling, aren't I?" "No, I'm interested in your friends. Actually, I'm interested in learning everything about you." I tried to make it sound lighthearted, but I was serious. "He was talking about finding a place yesterday. It would be neat to come here for their wedding." "Maybe we could stay here. They have rooms." "Oh no, you moron, you went too far," my inner voice screamed. "That might be nice." And she gave me a smile. "I'll have to suggest the lodge to Terry. He and Rick are planning everything with the help of Rick's son. He's like 15 and is so excited for his dad." "What did you say?" Something she said caused a weird flash in my mind. "What?" "I said I'd tell Terry about the lodge." She looked puzzled by my reaction. "No, not that. Something else. You said that Rick had a boy, a child?" "Yes, so?" "He's gay." "Right, so?" "He's gay and has a child." A bright light went off in my brain, and in an instant, I realized that Margaret DeVries was in grave danger. I jumped out of my seat. "I'll be right back." I stepped outside, trying to find Margaret's number as fast as I could. Adrenaline was pulsing through me as I dialed, muttering the mantra, "Answer, answer, answer." Nothing. I texted her, "Stay away from your son. Go immediately to the sheriff's office. I'll meet you there." I started to put my phone back in my pocket when it rang. It was Margaret. "Turn on FaceTime," came Tim's voice, dark and low. "What?" "You have an iPhone. Turn on FaceTime. Don't do anything else. Just find the icon and turn it on or my mother dies." I had used FaceTime exactly twice when I first got the phone, but I figured it out. I could see Tim, and behind him, taped to a chair, was his mother. I couldn't tell where they were. "Where are you?" Tim asked, as though he was echoing my thoughts. "Wakulla Springs." This seemed to take him a minute to process. "Okay, here's what I want you to do. Keep the phone on FaceTime. Keep the camera on your face at all times. If you hang up, she dies. If you lose your signal, she dies. If you try in any way to alert someone, she dies. You are going to come to me. I can't guarantee that I won't lose my signal. I'm down in Wakulla County. I'd suggest you stick to the main roads." He was hard and cold. I'd never seen or heard him like this. "I have a date. She's in the restaurant. I have to let her know I'm leaving." I turned the phone so he could see her through the dining room's large French windows. "If I don't, she may call my father or someone else. Get her attention, wave, smile, and leave. Don't go back in the restaurant. Or she dies." I had a totally selfish moment when I thought, let the horrible woman die. I'm going back and finishing my date. But that wasn't possible. It was easy to get Kara's attention, as she'd been watching me while I talked on the phone. "Keep the phone on your face, wave and smile, and then walk around the building to the parking lot." I waved, and Kara smiled and waved back. It broke my heart. I walked away as fast as I could. You don't have to do this. I know. Shut up. He cut me off. I'm not going to talk about it. Just get in your car and drive. Keep your phone on your face. Listen, that's going to be very difficult. Do I give a damn? Figure it out. Chapter 21. It took me a minute to get the phone set up on the dash mount so that it kept my face in frame while I drove. My mind was working, trying to figure out the most populated route home with the hopes I could keep the signal. I looked at the battery icon and saw that the charge was 94%. Should be more than enough for the hour-plus drive home. Where am I going? I'll direct you once you're back in Adams County. My muscles were aching from gripping the steering wheel when I finally crossed into Adams County. I tried to come up with a way out of this, but everything ended with Margaret DeVries dead, and probably with Tim dead too. I tried getting him to talk to me several times, but each time he just cut me off. His voice was flat and emotionless. I tried to ignore my phone as it rang off and on. Tim finally started giving me directions, heading me toward Calhoun. After a few more miles and several more turns, I realized I was coming in on the south side, heading for the area around the warehouse where Mark Kemper had been shot. When I was close, Tim gave me 2 more turns that led me to a spot several blocks over from the warehouse and railroad tracks, but still within the industrial area. Get out of your car and come into the building you see to your right, he told me. It was an old tobacco warehouse. Use the office door. The rusty door with its faded sign reading office was at the top of 5 concrete steps. I opened it and stepped into a moldy, dusty room filled with old metal desks and ratty leather chairs. It was obvious that the place hadn't been used for years. Take your gun out of your holster and place it in the desk. Show it to me on the phone and then close the drawer. I was on a date. I don't have a gun. I pulled my shirt out of my pants and showed him that I wasn't wearing a gun inside my waistband. Bullshit. Let me see your ankles. Busted. I took the PPKS off my ankle, showing him as I put it in a drawer. After he made sure that I wasn't hiding anything else, he told me to leave the room. I was in a hallway and was instructed to go up a metal staircase. The rusty iron stairs squeaked and groaned as I climbed them. At the top was a small hallway with 2 doors. One of them opened. I could now hear Tim without the phone. Drop the phone and stomp on it. He stuck his head out the door and watched me smash the phone to pieces. But I don't have insurance for my phone, I said, a lame joke. Anything to try and jog him out of his single-minded focus. Focus on what? Was the question running around inside my head. Just do it! Then come in here! The room was large, probably an old storage room. There were still a few boxes stacked around the edges. Taped to a chair in the middle of the room was Margaret DeVries. She had a gag over her mouth, and her eyes were hot and hostile. So, what do you know? He asked in a voice that was way too calm. I think I have most of it figured out. Sit down in that chair. He pointed to a chair at a 90-degree angle from Margaret's and about 10 feet away. You're Mark Kemper's son, I said, sitting down in the chair. He tossed me a roll of duct tape. Tape your feet to the legs of the chair, and then tape your left hand to the arm. I started taping my feet. I find it hard to understand why you had to kill him. I'm sure it was a shock, but he killed my real father, he screamed. First he tells him that ridiculous story that he had sex with her. He pointed to his mother. He was gay. I know she's a whore, but how could he? How could she? His fury was palpable. An hour after Kemper left us, Dad collapsed. That queer killed my father and tried to convince me that I was his son. I'd managed to tape up my feet and hand. He came over to me, his face flushed from the fury surging through him. When he went to grab the tape from my hand, I hit him as hard as I could with my free hand. The angle and the leverage was all off. I made solid contact, but not the knockout blow that I needed. Fuming, he kicked my chair, causing me to fall over backward. I hit my head hard enough to leave me seeing stars. Before I had a chance to recover, he jerked my free hand over to the arm of the chair and was wrapping it with duct tape. He didn't bother to right my chair. The pain and blood rushing to my head caused me to black out. "Wake up, you moron!" I heard through the dense fog swirling between my ears. Where am I? And why do I feel so odd? I asked myself. Wake up! Wake up! I couldn't think with all that racket. Shut the hell up! I screamed. The yelling stopped, and I managed to open my eyes. Everything came back at once. I tried to look around, but it was hard to turn my head since part of my body weight was resting on it. I rolled the chair so that I was lying on my back. My neck was unsupported, but at least I could look around. Tim was nowhere to be seen. Margaret was glaring at me. Are you finally awake? She sneered. You're lucky I got my gag off. Otherwise, who knows when you would have woken up? We'll see if that was good or bad luck, I said, tired of her annoying voice already. Go ahead, Mr. Bruce Willis. Make jokes. He's going to come back here and kill both of us. I had to roll over on my side to give my neck some rest. Looking around the room, I couldn't see anything that would help me get the tape off my hands or feet. Both of us had tape wrapped around our hands, as well as our wrists. Nothing dumb about Tim. Trying to scoot or roll myself in the chair was next to impossible. Finally, I lay still, exhausted and sore from my efforts. Do something, she yelled at me. I don't see what I can do, I yelled back, exasperated. If you had told me that he was Mark Kemper's son right from the beginning, we wouldn't be in this situation. Screw you. I didn't know he killed Mark, and I can't believe he killed Dell. She sounded genuinely baffled. I doubt that he knew he was going to do it when he went to meet with her, but the revelation about his parentage and the shock of Jim DeVries, the man he thought was his father, being struck down by a stroke, you add on the fact that he wasn't going to inherit a farm and a business that he dedicated his life to if the truth got out. His reaction is not that shocking. I paused. Dell must have realized what had happened. I take it she knew that Mark was Tim's father? I told her the truth when I learned I was pregnant. The two of us figured out that I could marry Jim, and he'd never know any different. We'd had sex a couple of times, and he wasn't too smart about stuff like that. You took advantage of him. I gave him a hell of a lot. He loved marrying me. I was the catch of the county. You don't know how many men were panting after me. You had all those guys after you. Then why the hell did you sleep with Mark? My neck was killing me. I had to change position again. That was the first and only time I took pity on someone. See where it got me? Mark told me he thought he was gay. Queer was the word he used. He was so young and pathetic. He was the first guy I liked. Weird, right? It wasn't a sex thing. I'd just gone out with him because he had the hot car, and he talked about something other than football. I was going to ditch him as soon as I got tired of riding around with him. But then he told me he might be gay, and got all teary-eyed and sad. I looked over at him, curled up against the door of the car, and I told him there was one way to find out. Great. Pity sex killed us. They can put that on our gravestones, I moaned. It wasn't good. He managed to get it hard and push it in. Boys being boys, his little man took over and finished the job. Afterward, he cried. Wait a minute. You all did it by the old juke joint. That's why Tim picked the warehouse parking lot to kill Mark. I guess so. When did Mark know that Tim was his son? I've always been a bitch. I told him I was pregnant. More crying. I couldn't stand the sight of him at that point, and told him to go away and never talk to me again. I honestly thought he might have blocked it out of his memory. I guess he didn't. She said the last bit softly, as if she finally felt real regret. I looked toward the door. Where do you think Tim went? What do you think? Look around. Who's missing from our happy little family? She asked bitterly. Tilly. We have a bingo. The only legitimate heir to the DeVries name and property. Why didn't you tell me about Tim? Jesus, are you that naive? I thought I could work it to my advantage. Jim had a lot of money. I got a very small piece of the pie when we got divorced. But Tim killed your sister. Guess I was in denial about that. Anyway, she was dead. Nothing was going to bring her back. What did Norman Bates say? We all go a little crazy sometimes. I hoped he'd gotten it out of his system. Honestly, I thought your lot would find some evidence and arrest him. You didn't, and then he started asking a lot of questions. Questions? About who else might know. Were there any records? That sort of thing. Let me guess. You told him about the doctor. Dr. Brooke knew that it wasn't Jim's baby. He and Dell were the only ones. I told Tim that he might have some records that would give it away. So you didn't tell me that Tim was Mark's son, which would have saved lives, but you told Tim about Dr. Brooke and got him killed. So why did Tim turn on you? She was quiet for a while. I didn't like the way he was looking at me. I decided to make a run for it. He caught you. I did the second decent thing in my life. I called Tilly to warn her. I got her voicemail and got part of the story out before he grabbed me and brought me here. But wait, I'm still confused. If you had gotten Tim arrested for the murders, Tilly would have inherited. Wouldn't that have worked out for you? Have you been living under a rock all your life? Mothers and daughters don't really get along that well. Every time I thought that might be the way to go, I remembered how many times I'd called her a fat pig, or told her that a dress would look better on a horse, or any number of not-so-sweet things I said. Even though Tim stayed with his father, he always called me. We had a little of the mother-son bonding thing going on. Right before he abducted me, I thought that I might have done the right thing by breastfeeding him. Guess it didn't make a difference. There were sounds coming from the stairs, steps, struggling, creaky flooring, and muffled screaming. The door opened, and Tim shoved Tilly, taped up like the rest of us, into the room. She stumbled and fell, landing close to me. Her angry, terrified eyes looked into mine, pleading for help, but I couldn't give her any hope. Tim closed the door and stood looking at all of us. No one said a word for a few moments, and then Margaret and I spoke at once. I'd clap, but you taped my hands to the chair, Margaret said. You're getting quite the collection. Tim, you don't have to go down this road, I said. He stared at me with dead eyes. We can resolve this. My father can help get you out of this bind. My inner voice wanted to know why the hell I hadn't taken the hostage negotiation class at Quantico when it was offered. I'd had a choice. I could have gone to Virginia and learned to talk slowly and calmly about pleasant things to homicidal maniacs. Or I could have gone to SHOT Show in Las Vegas and looked at all the cool new weapons and body armor, plus gone to range day and shoot guns I could never afford to own. So I went to Las Vegas on the county dime with 2 other guys from our department. I should have at least gotten the notes for the FBI hostage class. A little late now. Tim, listen to me, please. All I got was a stare. He was looking at all of us slowly. Not good. I felt like a lobster in a tank at a seafood restaurant. I'm your mother, Margaret started. But before she could say more, he got right in her face and roared. I hate you! You ruined my whole life! Everything I ever thought was true turned out to be a lie. Now I've done horrible things because of the lies you told me. I wish I could kill you 1,000,000 times, over and over and over again. He was miming hitting her with a blunt object. An appeal to motherly love wasn't going to get us very far. I tried again. Let's just talk this through. You and me. In fact, why don't you put duct tape over your mother's mouth? This at least got him to look at me and smile a bit around the corners of his mouth. I should apologize for leaving you to listen to her bitchy voice. I don't have anything against you. That was a ray of light, though I didn't think I'd get Officer of the Year if I talked him into freeing me and left his mom and sister to be killed. I understand how all this happened. Believe me, I've seen people get out of worse scrapes. That was a complete lie. No way was he going to get out of this mess. But I didn't know what else to say. I just hoped he was in shock and not seeing the obvious cluster he'd gotten himself into. After 3 murders and 3 kidnappings, I was perfectly willing to call it a win if he killed himself, and we all lived. Call the sheriff's office. Call my dad. You know him. He'll be honest with you. You know that. No one in the county is a straighter shooter than Dad." That was all true, and I was also confident that Dad would lie, cheat, or steal to get hostages out safely. "I'm not calling anyone. I'm going to finish this here and now," he said in icy tones. Not good. We were approaching nothing to lose on the take a chance meter. "Your real dad was gay?" I blurted out. Tim came over and looked down into my face. "Don't say that," he said in a menacing voice. Tim and Jim were very religious. I knew that aspect of the situation had to be eating at him. By harping on it, was I going to help, or was I lining myself up to die with the other two? What would Quantico say? "Why not? It's the truth, right?" This earned me a kick in the ass. His boot rammed into my butt 3 times before stopping. "That's why I've got to kill everyone who knows. All of it is lies," he shouted. I didn't point out the logical fallacy of that argument. Margaret, who'd remained silent since I suggested that Tim tape her mouth shut, had to step in. "Mark was your father. You'd better accept that. I know I did wrong not telling you a long time ago, but I thought I was doing it for your own good. Listen to me, I won't spill your secret. You can kill these two, and I'll help you convince the cops that Tilly killed everyone." That last part caused Tilly to start kicking and squirming on the floor in anger. I just sent a very specific telepathic message to Margaret. "You bitch. Everyone knows that Jim was your father. No one is going to believe her." "Don't bullshit me," he said angrily. I tried another angle. "Okay, listen. You believe in God. What you've done is wrong, but you can make up for it. You have the chance to save 3 people's lives. Your dad, Jim, would have wanted that. He loved you. He loved Tilly. Hell, at one time he even loved your mom." Tim looked at me with cold eyes. "After Mark told him I was his son, the son of a gay man and a woman that Jim had learned to hate. Do you know what Jim did? He spat in my face and told me to pack my things and get out of his house. All my life I only wanted one thing, just one thing." He was down in my face now. "I wanted that man to be proud of me. Got up every morning determined to do whatever I had to do so that he would look at me with pride. When he introduced me to people as his son, I could hear the pride in his voice. All of that was gone. Then Jim was wrong. Mark was a good man. Jim never should have put that on you. I'm sure he would have felt differently over time. Obviously, he didn't know about any of this either. He was as shocked as you. Think how he must have felt. But you are a great son, and the fact that you all didn't share DNA wouldn't have mattered when he had time to think about it. None of this matters. We're beyond all of that. He's dead. Mark's dead. My aunt is dead." I was waiting for him to add that we would be joining them soon enough. I knew I hadn't changed his mind at all. Tim was backed into a corner by fate and his own actions. He could only see one door. He only had one chance to get out of all of this. Kill everyone. Chapter 22. Redemption. I was straining to remember Sunday sermons and the few Bible classes I'd attended. As long as there is life, there is the chance for redemption. You can be forgiven. For a moment, he seemed to think about what I was saying, but then he turned and left the room. I relaxed. If he wasn't in the room, he couldn't kill us. My only strategy now was to stall for time. For what? I didn't know, but every second we were alive was a second more that we were alive. "I don't think you're helping," Margaret said with venom. "Don't you even start. Trying to throw your own daughter and me under the bus? I get free, I'll club you to death myself." Tim came back into the room, and when I saw the hammer he was carrying, a shiver ran down my spine. A spine that was feeling various shades of yellow. I couldn't be sure, but in my heart I knew that it was the blunt object he'd used on Mark or Dell. "Wait!" He stopped and looked at me with those dead eyes as my mind searched for something, anything, to stall him. At least take the gag off of Tilly." His eyes narrowed. "Why would I do that?" "She deserves to have her say." "She deserves? How the hell do you figure she deserves anything? Not once did she ever think of Dad. Never. Always what she wanted. Don't tell me what she deserves." "Let her speak. You've had your say. Let's hear what she has to say." He looked exasperated. "I don't have to take that tape off. I'll tell you what she'll say. She's going to whine and cry and tell us how she's the victim." "You really are afraid to give her a chance, aren't you?" I kept going. If he was talking, he wasn't bashing. That was my new motto. "Fine. You have got to be the stupidest." He went over and literally ripped, the tape off of her mouth. She would never have to worry about hair on that upper lip. Tilly screamed and kept screaming. "You happy?" he asked, looking at me. "Shut up! Hey, Tilly!" I said, trying to get her attention. "Talk to him!" I yelled over her screaming. "Turn me loose! Help! Help!" she continued to screech. Running out of breath, she panted and began to calm down some. "Damn it, Tim, let me go!" "No." "Tim, please." "That shit worked on Dad, not on me. I saw through every one of your little ploys. You always got your way without lifting a finger. You'd do some stupid crap and he'd give you money or buy you a new car. You're the one that should have been kicked out of the family. Hell, you left and he forgave you." Tim raised the hammer and moved toward her. She cringed and tried to scoot away. She must have seen the same look I saw in his eyes. "What are you going to do? Kill all of us?" I asked, trying to redirect his attention. "Yes." For a minute, I thought he was going to swing the hammer. "Then what? Tim, what are you going to do then?" I shouted, trying to take his focus off of his sister. Again, he hesitated. "I'll get rid of your bodies and go on living my life." "That's not how it's going to work. Do you think my dad is going to give up until he's found the person who murdered me?" "No one's going to find your body, or theirs," he said, pointing the hammer at the women. "Where are you going to dump us? That old sinkhole on your property?" This surprised him. He turned back to me, and I knew that I'd guessed right. "The most obvious body dump around? Please. They'll be dragging that before Christmas. You'd better come up with a cleverer plan than that." He was staring at me now, hefting the hammer up and down. I looked around. There was only one dirty window in the room. I momentarily fantasized that Pete was out there somewhere with a rifle trained on Tim. "Maybe I can help you. The coast is only about an hour away. You could do the Dexter thing and chop us up and sink us out at sea." "Shut up!" Tilly yelled. "What are you doing?" What you wouldn't do, engaging him in conversation, I thought. But I ignored her and kept eye contact with Tim. I was exhausted and sore, but determined to drag this out as long as possible. I wanted to get every last second out of my life. "No, you'd be sure to get a ton of trace evidence in any vehicle you used. Besides, you'd have to rent a boat, which means there would be a record of it. Must be a better way." Tim was staring at me. I seemed to have him mesmerized. "Okay, sinkhole out, dumping at sea out, burning, that's it." "Don't help him! Stop it!" Tilly screamed. "Shut up!" Margaret yelled at Tilly. "Just shut the hell up! My God, you are the whiniest daughter any woman ever had. Tim, you and I can agree to that. Don't you think for 1 minute I was happy when she said she'd go with me. I wanted you to come live with me. Like you said, you had a work ethic. She never did one damn thing to help me. Always take, take, take." Tim turned on her now. I think Margaret understood what we had to do, or she was just looking for another opportunity to sell us out. "Where do you think she learned it?" Tim demanded. "From you! I should have killed you before. Every time you called Dad on the phone wanting some shit, he'd go into a funk for days. He wanted to tell you no, but he couldn't. That stupid old man loved you even after you tore his heart out. That's why you never told him the truth. Finding out that you tricked him into taking care of a bastard child would have been the last straw. He would have kicked you to the curb if he'd known that your whole marriage had been built on a lie. Nothing was real." He swung the hammer, but pulled the punch at the last second hitting Margaret on the side of the head. I didn't think it was a death blow. Margaret screamed, and when she tried to avoid the hammer's second swing, her chair toppled. The other side of her head bounced off the floor. She lay there dazed and whimpering. I could see that his actions had sent adrenaline coursing through Tim's system. He was pacing up and down, swinging the hammer and mumbling, working himself up to kill one of us. At that moment, I heard a noise. Someone or something was on the staircase. At this point, I didn't care what it was. I yelled for help. I screamed. They came through the door like champions. Smoke filled the room, and there were people shouting. Thrown to the floor, Tim roared with rage like a trapped animal. A hand grabbed me. Through the haze of smoke and confusion, I saw my father dressed in tactical gear, kneeling beside me. "Are you okay?" I had to think about it for a minute. "Sure," I answered. He lifted the chair into an upright position. Pulling a knife out, he started cutting away the tape. Matt had Tim on the ground, handcuffing him. Pete, wearing a tack vest several sizes too small for him, came lumbering in and over to me. "They had me posted on the other building, or I'd have been with the entry team." "Hell, we'd have used you as a battering ram," Dad said, and then turned to me. "What is going on?" "Tim killed them all." The look in his eyes told me that he'd had no idea. "If you didn't know that, why are you here? How'd you find me?" I asked, puzzled. Dad took out his phone and started going through it. "Your girlfriend called us. Lucky for you, she isn't stupid. After half an hour of waiting, she went looking for you. Not finding you or the car, and not getting any answer when she called your cell phone, she decided she'd better call someone. She called the vet, got my personal number, and told me that she thought something had happened to you. We put out the alarm, had everybody looking for your car or you. Then we found your car parked in the Super Save lot." I realized Tim must have moved it when he went out looking for Tilly. "About an hour ago, I got a text that gave this address with 911 and your name. We came up slowly, caught a glimpse of Tim at the window, and thought that you might be inside. We were working on a plan when we heard the scream." "Funny, I didn't send you a text," I told him. He looked at me and raised his eyebrows. "Well, doesn't matter, I guess. You must have a guardian angel. I'll leave it to you to figure out how to write up that part of the report. In my after-action report, I'm just going to put that we received an anonymous tip." He put his hand out to help me out of the chair. Every muscle in my body was aching. Margaret and Tilly were already being led down the stairs. "Wait a minute," I called to the officers leading Margaret down. "After she's been checked out of the hospital, I want her brought to the jail and put into a holding cell." She turned, her face beet red. "What are you talking about? I'm going to sue you and everyone in this backwoods sheriff's office." "Have at it. But I'm going to do my best to get the state attorney to prosecute you as an accessory to at least one, if not two, of the murders." Her face went from red to ashen white. The men on either side of her had to catch her to keep her from collapsing. I filled Dad in on all the details as he drove me home. "I don't understand why he went to the trouble of cutting off Kemper's fingers and smashing his face. He must have known we'd figure out who Kemper was." "I think he was in such a daze after killing him that he wasn't thinking. The face probably had more to do with suppressed rage than an attempt to cover up the identity of the body. The hands might have been part of a half-thought-out plan. The shock of having killed him was so overwhelming that Tim probably convinced himself he could get away with it. Then, when no one arrested him and we didn't identify Mark right away, he realized that other people knew and had to be dealt with." Dad stayed with me for an hour and then left me to decompress with Ivy's cuddly attention. Around 9 o'clock, I decided to call Kara. I wanted to let her know I was all right, how grateful I was, and how sorry I was for the way the day had turned out. "Larry, I'm so glad you weren't hurt." "Thanks to you." "I kind of figured something was wrong. You don't strike me as the type of guy to run out on a date like that." "Not usually. Funny, when all of this was going down, I kept worrying about how mad you must be." "I'll admit that when I got out to the parking lot, I had a moment when I thought you might be the biggest asshole I've ever gone out with. But when I thought about you," she paused. "Well, I couldn't believe that. Of course, my other uncharitable idea was that you'd had some sort of psychotic break." "That could happen at any time," I joked. "Larry," she got quiet, then went on solemnly, "I'm not sure the dating thing is going to work." "But you know that I didn't skip." "Not that. I know you didn't have any choice but to leave me. I just don't think the cop thing works for me." I answered sincerely, "I'm not married to this job. I know guys who are. I'm not." "I believe you, but it's too soon for me to know how I feel about you. So I can't ask you to give it up right now. Besides, I don't think you're ready to abandon your father." There was no malice in her tone. "I wouldn't be abandoning him." "I think he might feel like you were, and you might too." Deep down, I knew she might be right. "We're still friends?" "Of course." "If I bump into you somewhere, we can chat like old school chums." "Yes." "You'll leave the door open to the possibility that in the future we might date again?" "Yes, I will. As long as you promise not to run out and leave me with the bill again." "That's a deal." We said our goodbyes. I was staring at the phone, feeling sorry for myself when it rang. The caller ID said CI. "Eddie, what can I do for you?" I asked, perhaps a little more curtly than was polite. "That's it? What can I do for you?" he said, sounding perturbed. "It's late, and I've had a rough day." "Your day might have been a lot rougher if I hadn't texted your daddy where you were." "You did that?" "I heard you were missing. Told you I was keeping my ear to the ground. Not hard with cops in the family. Then I thought they might want to check out the address where a guy told my friend he'd met a fellow who was interested in starting fires." "Damn. Yeah. Sounds a little better having me as an informant now, doesn't it?" He was clearly enjoying his victory lap. "Yeah, Eddie, I guess it does." I had to give him that. "Right. Next time, maybe you'll answer my text." "Promise. Thanks. I mean it. Thanks." "No problem. Catch you later." And he hung up. Terrific. My relationship with my confidential informant rat was going fine, but I'd somehow buggered up my chance at romance. "Ivy, I think you are going to be due for a trip to the vet in a few weeks." Ivy only looked at me with her "we'll see about that" stare. This has been November's Past, a Larry Macklin mystery, Book 1, by A.E. Howe, narrated by James D. Sasser. Copyright 2016 by A.E. Howe. Production copyright 2022 by A.E. Howe.